Do I need to get you a bucket?
As far as I know, I'm good.
Are you running out of buckets?
Yeah, we had to draft in a new bucket. Our bucket's name is Barfy. It was named by the kids.
It's clever.
So, but we had 2 people yesterday, so we had to commission a new Barfy.
So what do you use for a barf bucket?
A small, a small plasticky garbage can.
Okay.
A nice round one. It looks almost cute.
Do you exclusively use it for vomit, or
Yes.
will it double as something else?
It was bought for to be used as a trash can, and it quickly became drafted into that. And now it's just that.
Huh. Yeah, you have a bunch of kids when you have like a puke bucket like
Yep.
designated. Folks, you're getting us today. It's going to be a little bit of a shorter Saturday or Friday episode. Brakken had a family emergency yesterday with the kids. So we are recording at our not normal time under a condensed window because you had just been ravaged, the household, by the pukies.
Yeah, we thought we had all gone through it, but 2 people hadn't thrown up, but they had got strep, and that was Lisa and Mira. When they each got it, Mira was 2 nights ago, and Lisa was last night, and so they were kind of overlapping a little bit. We set a record in our house. I told you offline, but between 8 p.m. and 8 a.m., Mira threw up 27 times, which is just like an outrageous performance.
Like once every 10 minutes.
Yeah, from like 1 in the morning till 3 in the morning. Maybe it was 12:30 till 3. It was every 9 to 10 minutes.
Is she like just shot today, or is she bouncing around and you're
Yesterday
the only one
she was shot. Yesterday she was shot. Plus you're down on so much nutrition and hydration. We just got to the point we couldn't give her anything to drink for like 7 hours because it would just come right back up. So today she's starting to catch up on calories a little bit. So
Brakken told me a story before we started recording, and I can't tell if you have like a little bit of a bump on your nose from what you told me happened. Do you see that little red mark on the end of your nose?
I do.
A little. It could just be the lighting.
It was here.
Oh, okay.
This,
Brakken fell asleep doom scrolling. Well, he's trying to stay up for Mira. He said he was lying down, had his phone looking at it, trying to stay awake at like 2:30 in the morning to assist her, and you woke up to your phone smashing you in the face.
Right on the bridge of the nose.
Yeah, okay. So that mark is not from the phone to the nose.
No, who knows what that is?
Who knows what that is? That's funny. All right.
Yeah, so I used to be able to stay up really late. Like I'm sure most people could when they're young, but I was struggling to stay awake. It was like 2:55, and the next thing I knew, I had fallen asleep with my hand above my head, dropped my phone right on my nose.
Nothing
that bought me another like 9 minutes before I fell asleep again.
Maybe it's just me, but like if I have a sleepless night or it's the middle of the night and I end up just on my phone, like in a dark room, like your face is lit up, right? And you're just like, nothing makes me feel like it's the end of the world or like you're more alone than you've ever been in your entire life than middle of the night on your phone in a dark room. Do you feel that way? Just doesn't feel good.
No, you're not supposed to be doing it. Like, it feels wrong.
It really does.
I went with like audiobooks and podcasts for a while, but eventually that was just like someone whispering, fall asleep right into my ear.
So we weren't going to have the best of Brakken yesterday. Oh, scam call coming in. Do you have a garbage truck outside your house right now?
You hear it again?
Yeah.
Randomly, these things knife through this mic.
Yeah. Anyways, Brakken was just working on functioning yesterday. So we were going to do a longer episode as we normally do for Friday and Saturday, or the Saturday long run. But I should say me, and I've said this many times before, get particularly irked when Q&A questions are still left in the cache. And we still had 8 we did not get to. What was it, on our Tuesday episode or our Friday episode last week?
Last Friday.
So I think this is a perfect situation to knock these out.
Yeah. 8 questions.
I've got 8 screenshots.
64 minutes. Boom.
Yeah, I think we can do it. And then you got to get to work for appointments you had to cancel yesterday. You rescheduled them for today, right?
As my least favorite thing is rescheduling work.
It just
you know that this should be done already.
Well, here we are, and here we go. With
Last
the
bit of
Q&A.
caffeine going down the hatch.
Me too. All right. Cheers.
Let's rock.
Just kidding. I have a little bit left. All right. This is for Brian. Brian's picture. I can see him. He's shirtless, shredded, but there's a bone frog banner in the background.
That's how you know you're a real one.
Yep. All right. Q&A.
Have you done a bone frog?
I have not. My first OCR ever was a battle frog, and then it went under like 2 months later.
You were the kiss of death.
I might have been. Have you done a bone frog?
Yeah, I have.
And
it's a good race. It's like it was akin to a savage race to me.
Well, Bone Frog Brian, here we go. Q&A. Thanks for another great year of episodes in 2024. In the year-end recap, Brakken discussed not doing things that led to weakness and ultimately injury. My question is, what specifically will you be doing different in 2025 to avoid this happening again? And in general, what should the rest of us make sure to keep in our plans based on what you've learned? Thanks, Brian. It's a great question.
It is.
Yeah.
This is one of those questions that the only thing that gave me I don't even know if knowledge is the right word, experience to answer this question the way I will is by getting older. I don't feel old until I'm injured. And then the comeback from injury is slower each time. And so I wouldn't have answered this the way I am now, but the piddly stuff is what I have to do in order to remain healthy moving forward. And the piddly stuff looks different to everyone. I don't maybe define the piddly stuff the way you guys did. I wasn't even on that episode, but people reference that more than just about any episode we've had in the last few years when you had your chiropractor buddies on there.
You weren't on that episode? Was that when you were gone or something?
I think I was in Sweden.
Okay.
But people reference the piddly stuff all the time to me, to the point where I had to go back and re-listen to it to make sure we were on the same page. And they use it to mean like the non-main portions of workouts. And I kind of talk about it like that, but more like the things I put off, the things that I look at as piddly. And so for me, and for a lot of people, I think when you get older or you change your training, things seem to go on the rear chain or the front chain, depending on what you've avoided. So for me, it's the front chain gets injured when I don't lift it. The rear chain gets injured when I don't do the real quote unquote piddly stuff. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have to lift consistently. Have to. I have to do full warm-ups consistently. Not because I need the warm-up to not get hurt. I can jump into exercises still. I'm still young enough to do that. But I need the work from the warm-up to stay on top of like plyometric things. And I need core work. Those are my three biggest. And then the final would probably be mechanical speed work, but core, plyometric, and strength training.
And you feel like those are things you weren't doing with these injuries? So
it's things I never did. I mean, there's been times I've done core. There have been times I've done plyo. I do like strength training. It comes in. It's the first thing I cut out when something happens. But as long as I was consistently training and racing and playing basketball and doing all the things I'd like to do, those things didn't cause me to have a deficiency, but they were just barely covered up. And then as soon as I get behind the eight ball on those things, then they cause issues. So that's specifically what I'm doing. Core work, plyometric work specifically for my calves and my Achilles, and then strength work.
This is very tangential. I'm going to make it quick, but you said basketball, and I wanted to ask you about this off mic, but I'm going to ask you on since it's the time. Your sister was MVP of something.
Yeah.
What did I see?
So overseas, they do a mid-season tournament. And actually, the NBA has recently adopted it. They tried it out. But so they have a mid-season playoff.
Okay.
So it's like an all-star break or whatever. They have a tournament. So she was MVP of that tournament.
Maren Kraker, MVP of the women's professional league she's in overseas.
Correct.
You really are surrounded by athletes, huh?
Yeah, and she's playing the best basketball of her life right now. She's
Is it
just
possible to
going
watch any
off.
of that stuff over here?
Yeah.
It
Yeah,
is.
they have
Okay.
a live stream for all of it.
Okay. Sorry, I don't mean to. It just something I've been genuinely meaning to ask you about, and then
Yeah.
you said basketball, and it triggered me. But I think in your case, and I don't know, Brian, if you're asking out of personal curiosity for yourself, and do you want to take some lessons, or you're generally just curious about Brakken's well-being. Both are acceptable ways to look at this. You got away, and I think those are the right terms, and I think it's the place I'm in right now. I'm getting away with just showing up.
Yeah.
Right. I put on my running, and it's starting to catch up to me as I've spoke about in recent podcasts, but you put on your shoes for years and you run and stay injury free. And sure, you do some lifting, but nothing ever really takes you out, and you assume that it isn't needed. And then suddenly, for the first time in a while, something keeps gnawing at you to the point you have to listen. And then you listen. And then now we know your story, surgeries and everything. And you almost are still stuck in the old frame of mind. Like, I used to be able to run injury free. I didn't have to do all these things to stay healthy. It's really hard to retrain because it's so time consuming, and it's inconvenient AF to do all these things when you're a dad of 3 and a busy coach and podcast host, to take the extra 20 minutes a day or 1 hour a week on a strength session when you didn't have to before. And I think that is almost one of the biggest keys as you progress throughout your career, especially as you get older and your first injuries pop up, is like trying to get out of your own stupid box that you put yourself in that used to work for you. Because I'm telling you, as you progress and continue to train, what used to keep you healthy and work isn't going to work anymore. And then you have to like be comfortable enough to accept the fact that you need to invest more time in the non-training aspect of training in order to train.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting. And you're in that place, I think.
I am. And what I don't do well with myself is look at my entire being holistically. I feel like I do a decent job asking those questions of others, and I don't of myself. I always have my enlightened tunnel vision where I think I'm seeing it all, but I don't realize I have tunnel vision. And for so long, I knew I could just do these things to stay healthy, and I forgot about the peripheral pieces I was doing.
Sure.
So like I from the time I was 4 years old until like 30 something, I was always in a basketball league. I did all my plyometrics through playing basketball. And I'm not like a leaper, but I'm a bit of a jumper. And so I play more of like a at or at least near the rim game.
The fact you can dunk a basketball with all your endurance training and at your height is absolutely incredible.
I appreciate that.
Well, no, it really is. I mean, how tall are you?
6 foot.
Right. And you endurance train and you can dunk a freaking basketball? That's unheard of, but continue.
But as a result, like I try to contest shots, I rebound, I attack the basket, and I elevate. And what that means is that for decades straight, I was jumping hard and I was landing hard. And so while I didn't do plyometric training, I probably did more plyometric work than any other runner who trains plyometrics, because I'd play men's league basketball and I'd play pickup. And then when I was home here, I would play up at St. Aloysius with my buddies who had keys to the gym. When we went out to Colorado and I was training full-time for Spartan Race, Macaulay and I played once or twice a week, once at Fort Carson with some friends of his who were military members and would get us on the base. And then once at a local gym with this realtor guy who had, 3 sons who played high school and college ball, and they'd all get together with their friends and play. So we were still playing basketball throughout my most serious training years. So when I'd look back at my serious training years, I'd pour over my notes of what I was doing. Like, what am I missing? Why am I not staying healthy? But I never really put basketball into it. I always saw basketball as a risk, not anything that gave me a reward. But there was so much tendon, ligament, joint bulletproofing happening, as long as I wasn't hurting myself, that I didn't account for. And now I don't play basketball, really. Sometimes I play old man ball with my dad in the mornings. But since surgery, I stopped playing men's league because I know it's only a matter of time before I tear an ACL or an Achilles or something like that. But there goes all that. And then what started happening right away? I tore a calf, had Achilles tendonitis, quadricep tendinopathy. I'm a responder from the training side of things, which then just amplifies the divide between what my muscles can handle and what my non-musculature attachments can handle. So little things like that have to now be part of training. I didn't have to use to script that. Now I have to find a way to train that. So weird things like that as you age, the unintended consequences of maybe hobbies I've given up and then ripping downhills. It wasn't smart for me to rip downhills anymore. Well, that's akin to plyometrics as well.
It's good stuff here. I like
It's
your
long, like you said, long and tangential, but these are the learnings that I've finally come to grips with.
Yeah. Your comparison of I used to look at basketball as a risk, and now when I have more perspective, it's actually the opposite. I often will have an athlete who plays in an intramural soccer league. I have a very high end ultimate frisbee athlete who, in fact, ultimate is their focus, and they hire me in the off season, and we cycle through. And we had him on our podcast, Ryan, a professor at Vanderbilt. But anyways, and anytime somebody brings it up to me, like, can I fit in sand volleyball? Like, am I gonna have to give it up? And I'm like, no, don't give it up. Keep it in. I think you should keep it in. And that's not something I would have said years ago. So I think there's something to that. Mm-hmm.
Well, like you said, go ahead.
Well, no, it's just fun when you can make the piddly stuff fun.
Right.
Make it gamify it by actually playing. It's fun.
But then, like you said, like wife and kids, not necessarily the wife part, because Lisa was always there through this, but the kids, you make decisions. It doesn't have to be kids, but you get a little older and you make decisions with your time. The first thing I'm going to give up on my order of items I'd like to do is a basketball league. You know, it's a 10 to 30 minute drive each way. Plus, you're not going to go for less than 90 minutes. And if it's a game, it's probably you're going to be there gym time 2 hours. That's a 3-hour investment in your night. That's if I have a night where there's 3 hours free, should I be doing that? I decide not to. Plus, the kids are going to have their own practices now. Like, I'm going to not take you to practice so I can go be a weekend warrior. No, that's the first thing that I give up. And that's fine. Like, everyone has their compromises they make, whether it's for work or for relationships or for other pastimes. But then you have to program it in. Like, I have to program plyo. How do I do plyo? I've never done plyo. I know how to, but why would I'm not just going to program plyo naturally. Do you program plyometrics into your training?
Into my own training? I do not.
Right. And that's how I never programmed it. So I don't think to program it. But the way I get it, my poor man's plyo, I get it on quality and race day warm-ups. I'm doing all my skipping and my bounding and things like that. So what I have to do is increase my warm-ups on a daily basis to include more of that. Otherwise, I'm not just going to go down to the basement or go outside randomly throughout the day and be like, I'm going to hit 15 minutes of plyometrics here. It's not going to happen.
So long answer short, Bone Frog Brian, piddly stuff.
Piddly stuff.
Setting aside, making the time, even taking away from other things, other training stimulus, if it means staying above water. Yeah. All right, let's move on. We're 18 minutes into this thing. We're not trajecting well to get these all done. So this is an athlete I've worked with for years now, Janet Gubser. I'm going to give you a shout out, Janet. She's a school teacher. She's part of the 4 a.m. alarm club, every morning. And Janet went into the DecaFit World Champs in December, unsure of where she was at, let's say. I think ranked 7th was her best in any of the events. She competed in the Fit Mile and Strong. Janet came home with 3 podiums, a third, a second, and a second. She PR'd in everything by, incredible amounts. And she beat women she'd never even touched in the past. And Janet is dialed in. We got her dialed in, and she just was hungry. She ate at the DecaFit World Championships. Janet.
Interrupting you. First of all, congrats on that, Janet.
Yeah.
But secondly, even though times don't really matter at championships, congrats on PRing, because I think outside of like Lauren Weeks, nobody PR'd at this championship. It just wasn't happening. No one PRs the stronger the mile there because your gym setup is more conducive to fast times than the world championship setup. There's way more transition. So congratulations. That's awesome.
Yeah. She's a fiery redhead in her, I think, late 50s, Janet. You have to correct me. But anyway, she's just chasing it hard. But anyways, all right, let's get to her question. This came in via an email check-in of ours. I'm just going to read everything it was here. It says, I have a question that seems pretty basic, but if you think other people might be interested in the answer, you can save it and shorten it. Well, I'm not shortening it, Janet. I'm reading it. These days, most of us order our shoes and we cannot go run for miles and then send them back. How do you decide if you like them or if they will work for you? And then she says, this part may not be needed. I take them on the treadmill and run them through a warm up to some. So it's going to cut off a little bit, my screenshot. To warm up to some short intervals. If they are for hybrid, I also do some lunges, sled pushes, and box step overs to test stability and grip. Is that a fair test? So far, it has worked fairly well for most shoes, but I have a pair of Pumas that I liked, but after putting some miles in them, realized that I like them more for easier and shorter runs and probably wouldn't use them in DecaFit. That's it. Have a great New Year. So this is before New Year's. So basically, how do you vet out shoes with still being able to return them if you don't like them?
Yeah, this is very difficult because there's not a great way to do it unless you take advantage of companies' their generous return policies, which I don't recommend anyone does because that kind of ruins it for everyone else eventually when that company has to say, listen, we can't do this anymore. So going back to the shoe episode, I don't want everyone to have to become a shoe nerd, but you have to figure out what your feet do and don't like, and then figure out how to understand what that sounds like when other people talk about the shoe.
Okay.
So for example, I'm very sensitive to heel lift in my shoes. If my heel hold is not good in a pair of shoes, the shoe doesn't work well for me. And so I have to be able to find that when people say it's not a super secure shoe. Well, I need to know, what does that mean to them? Does that mean it feels like their foot sliding around the forefoot, feel like they're going to roll their foot out of it on the trail? Or does it mean their heels moving up and down? So I have to look for little language like that. That's like an instant identifier that I can't go in this shoe. So finding little things like that and taking the time to read some shoe reviews or listen to people's YouTube reviews, unfortunately, is the only way around this. The other way is just to resell them, Poshmark, eBay, whatever, and just take a 30 to 40% hit on all the shoes you don't like.
Or just have like a sweet array of lawn cutting shoes in queue. I have so much wasted money in my closet, one or two and done. And the problem is, which Janet outlines, is like sometimes you don't really know till you get into the shoe.
Yeah.
An icky first run or two can suddenly be your favorite shoe after you've put 30 miles in them. And something that feels great out of the box, you finally get 7 miles into a tempo, and now you realize this ain't your shoe. It's tough to know. But I think her vetting, like the treadmill run, give it an honest run, make sure they stay sparkly and clean. You can return a shoe, I think. After that's the only, I don't know what else to tell her. I think she's doing it right.
Yeah. Best case scenario, you have a friend close by that's your size. You just take a run in their shoes every time, but that's not very realistic.
Hopefully, we all have some sort of network, and I feel like if you post like, hey, one run, didn't like these shoes, who wants them, on your like social channels, usually you'll get a taker.
Yeah.
I'll jump on stuff like that for sure.
I have a question for you about that. Mm-hmm. Mizuno Rebellion Pro 3s. Mm-hmm. Have you given them a second chance yet?
No, because I have this Achilles issue and it's a goofy shoe. And so I'm going to hold off, but I am going to keep it. What I'll do is I couldn't even assess the shoe with the slip. It was snowy roads that day, and then the blister. So I'm going to tape my underfoot and give it another try to see if I can feel the shoe. So no, I haven't.
If it doesn't work, I will swap you for a pair of the 2s in size 10.5.
Well, I will tell you my qualm with the Rave Rebellion Pro 3 is it runs a little small. My toes are pushing at the end of that shoe, so it may be exactly what you need.
Interesting, because I have the 10 and a 10.5 of the 2s, and they both fit me true to size, maybe even a bit long.
My 10.5, that I think it's short. I think it's
interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, I have a 10.5 here that probably has 12 treadmill miles on it.
Okay. We can talk off mic. I got to get a little more underfoot on that one.
Okay.
Anything else you want to add to that?
No.
All right.
No, it's a quandary. You're stuck.
Sorry, Janet. We can't help you a whole lot.
Can't help you.
Todd asks, question. You may have gone on to answer it, so please disregard if you did. But in the latest episode, Brakken says if you can't hold your aerobic threshold for 3 hours, you are just underdeveloped. He goes on to say his LT heart rate 166, but he can't hold the pace necessary to get there for an hour. Some typos in here, Todd. Long way around to the question. Does pace dictate your LT heart rate when running? Wouldn't it be the pace you could hold for, say, an hour that would dictate the LT heart rate in that modality? So whatever pace he could hold would be his current LT heart rate in that modality.
That's a good
And
question.
and as he would get more fit, again, he'd produce less lactate and shuttle it more efficiently or effectively at faster paces, again, causing an improved heart rate response. Man, that was long. Sorry. Hope that makes sense, though.
All right, that's a really good question. And I'm going to answer this pseudoscientifically. So, lactate threshold is only measurable through measuring blood lactate. Now, there's an associated heart rate with it, but the pace is a byproduct or an associated metric of what's happening at that blood lactate. It's not that this pace you can keep for an hour is corresponding perfectly with the blood lactate level that is the inflection point of your lactate threshold. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So if you take a blood lactate threshold test, like if you do blood lactate testing, you take strips, you prick your finger, you put it on there, and you get your millimole reading. And in a test, it would show this is your inflection point where it kicks up right after this. So this is your exact lactate threshold point here. The corresponding heart rate and pace is the theoretical 1 hour pace, but it's not unless you can hold it for an hour. It doesn't change the fact that on the graph, that's the inflection point that says you are at your lactate threshold. But you have to be well trained in order to keep that pace and heart rate for the entire hour. Now, you could keep the heart rate easier than the pace, because if you keep slowing down and working hard, your heart rate will drop a little bit, but you can keep that up better than you can keep pace up. So in theory, yes, but in practicality, no, you cannot keep your velocity at lactate threshold for an hour unless you're able to.
Yeah, I don't like pace for lactate threshold. I mean, sure, it exists, but just as you mentioned about cardiac drift, like if we go off of pace, maybe you sit at or below LT for a while, but you get to the point where you start reaching and your pace says you're at lactate threshold, but your heart rate has now
Right.
well breached it. And so it can get kind of tricky. What is he actually asking here? Does pace dictate your LT heart rate when running, or wouldn't be okay, or the heart rate, and throw modality out the window? And I would argue, just to strip it down, would you argue heart rate?
I think that, and we talked about this on our online class we did, the night school, is that it's like triangulating. You can't go strictly off of any one thing other than blood. And that is the least convenient thing you could ever go off of. And so as a result, you have to know it all. You have to know roughly what pace I should be at. I need to know what heart
Right.
rate is associated with that. And I also need to know my breathing rate and my exertion level and what it feels like, so that when heart rate and pace are not to be trusted, I self-regulate and lower my pace down or raise it up. Heart rate can't be trusted on intervals under, like, I would say as high as 4 to 6 minutes. Even in a 3-minute interval, you're not going to have your lactate threshold heart rate, even if you're producing blood lactate at your threshold level. And in a long enough interval, you're going to have cardiac drift and you're going to be above your lactate threshold heart rate, despite the fact that you may not be above your lactate threshold. And the pace almost doesn't matter, except it gets you in the ballpark.
Oh, that's a great explanation. I agree. I mean, no, it's true. That's why this gets complicated, though. That's why
Yes.
there's a lot of weeds to dive into. Pace gets you in the ballpark, sure, but then you have to factor in duration. What if you turn into a headwind? What happens after 30 minutes at LT?
Right.
I still don't think, I mean, it is an exact science, but it is so far from an exact science from a user standpoint who goes out their door and puts their shoes on.
Yep.
I think it's like get in the ballpark. I was just watching I was on the treadmill before this, watching like David Roche's, whatever to his Road to Western States is episode 2, and as studied as those humans are, the Roches, he still is like, listen, I shouldn't be doing VO2 max work right now. It's January, but like, here's the thing: it's not like it doesn't need to be needle threading. I just need this for X, Y,
Right.
and Z, or maybe not even so, And some of the best in the world is like, I'm not testing. I don't even care right now.
Yep.
And so you can be off the mark and spend a lot of time in the zones you should be, even if you're left or right of center, working harder or easier. You're going to spend a lot of time on the way up and the way down in a productive zone and accomplishing what you most likely are trying to accomplish. even if you're a little left to center, right?
Yep.
I believe that way anyways.
For sure. And then he did say something about, in theory, over time, you get more efficient at all the processes of running the pace. And so then you can do that with a lower heart rate or keep that pace longer, or which is exactly the reason what we're talking about. Pace isn't the most accurate indicator. However, all of these metrics are the least accurate or the hardest to implement early on. A, you're not used to it, and B, you have a lot of rapid improvement early on. And then we all kind of steady out and even out over a while. And then you get the feel of it anyway. So you can kind of pick whatever you want. And I think pace actually is most appropriate for most people once you stop building fitness like crazy. Then like, I'm going to run about 6-minute pace here. But I also have done it enough that I can feel I should probably be running 6:10 today or 5:50. And later on in the reps, I might have to back it. Like, it all becomes a balancing act, but the longer you do it, the more you can rely on any one given metric because you know the feeling associated with it. And you have less opportunity to like make leaps in fitness.
I just also watched today a Grant Fisher workout on the track. I don't know if you stumbled upon that one.
Yes, we're kind of circling the same drains right now.
But
Is this the one he closed fast in the mile?
He ran 4 flat for his last mile. Yeah, but like, it's just so interesting how scientific and unscientific, even within one workout, it can be. His coach, but I don't know the guy's name. Who's his coach? Do you know?
I don't know what group he's in.
Okay, well, anyways,
Currently.
I liked the guy. He was vibing pretty hard, but he basically said, you're going to press for 2K. He's not going to test him at all. So he pressed for 2K. They ran like 409 pace or something for 2K. And then he goes into like a 6x800, and then they're testing his blood and saying, hold back. You're running 208. No, 206. No, you got to go back to 208. Now you're going to hold back around 208, 208. We're pricking you after a couple intervals. And then he says, you're going to close in a hard mile and just go hard.
Right.
Run hard and just don't kick in the final stretch. Just save that one gear. And then they don't test it all again. It's just like, okay. So even the best in the world, yes, they are finger pricking, but at the same time, the end caps to his workout was like, go work hard. We don't need to worry about that. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? It's just like when you stress over these things, and I'm not saying this gentleman is stressing over it. It's just like, some of the best don't even, aren't even being coached to worry about it at times.
Yeah. And this is why so many of the things we worry about don't matter. Like, threading the needle is the least important thing for 99% of people 99% of the time. Mm-hmm. And you take then knowing the why of the workout so important. Like, what does he have coming up? I think he's doing Armory and Melrose.
1,500 to open the season, and then he's only got like 2 or 3 races all indoor.
Yeah, so he's laying the groundwork for his summer and fall of racing, and they're taking baseline tests of lactate after different exertion levels to find out what do we need to know for later, and let's keep us in check. But we still have races coming up, so it's okay if we went over a little bit, but we still want the data. And we do have a race coming up, so we got to close hard in this workout. Like, if you wrote that down on paper without the rationale, you'd be like, this is a dumb workout.
Oh, and then we're going to finish with 60 meter pickups after it's all done, just for fun.
Yeah. If someone showed me that workout written out, the what without the why, like, this is a cobbled together mess. This is probably some high school coach who doesn't know what he's doing and is just like throwing things against the wall. But no, it's a pro group who has one of the best runners in the world, who has a couple different things that they're juggling right now. And so they're balancing their scales.
Yeah. I love, he's sandwiching. It's just interesting to think shorter intervals he was running slower for because they were trying to work a system. And then the longer intervals they're running faster for. And they're like, screw the system. We need to feel it. It's cool. All right. Should we move on?
Last comment on that. Mm-hmm. It's a great reminder to people that there isn't a switch that gets flipped and labels your workout. Like, you don't flip the switch and be like, oh, I went highly anaerobic. This is no longer a threshold workout. No, right. All the threshold development and benefits that happened still happened. They exist. And they exist independently of this rep where he went over. And all the threshold work didn't cancel out the, call it VO2 max work. Like, it's the speed work at the end didn't impact what had already happened.
Right.
You can step over and come back. We don't have to get too nitpicky about what did I accomplish. Like, you can accomplish multiple things in a workout.
Right. You progress through, let's say, just a tempo at a prescribed pace. That would be a tempo. and you end up feeling spicy and want to cut down at the end, and you spend a bunch of time over threshold the last 2 miles, and now suddenly it's not a threshold workout, even though the previous 6 miles were spent in threshold. It doesn't work that right.
Nope.
You can have lots of different samplings of energy systems, and it all goes to good places.
There's not a fitness accountant in your body that's sorting these intervals into columns, and if they don't fit, they get thrown out. It's not how it works.
Right. All right. Next question from Shane. Shane says, "Happy Sunday, Kirk. This can be a Q&A. I think it is crazy how when you hit a certain level, it is so difficult to overcome PRs. I think it is half mental and half increased engine. The engine takes time and effort. How do you overcome the mental blocks? I am chipping away at my treadmill 5K, but seeing that I am hitting close to my limit. I have certain trail segments that I just can't overcome, even coming within 1 to 3 seconds." And then he sends me a couple screenshots, but I think it's of his 5K. So he's saying, the better I get, the harder it is to improve.
And that's real. And that goes for everyone, but it is quadruply so when you are competing against you in practice. My opinion, in order to PR a practice segment or a treadmill test, you need to be like 10% fitter to show maybe like 3% improvement. Because every time you do that test, it's harder to get up for it. The first couple of times you do it, you oftentimes have a better result than when you're fitter later in the season because the novelty is gone. Now it's just uncomfortable.
I couldn't agree with that more, by the way. You're a great candidate to throw yourself into a handful of local 5K road races on flat courses or USATF certified. That's such a true thing. When novelty wears off and you knew how much it hurt to run your PR last time, and there's a bit of dread, and sometimes it's hard to attack full swings. And I can't think of a time in a training session in which I had an out of body experience to access something I didn't know was there. It had to be in a race with somebody on me or on my shoulder or chasing down. I really don't know if I can think of that, because there's, what I mean, when that race mode kicks in, whether you have a mile and a half to go in your 5K or it's off the gun where you're like, oh, I'm going to get drug along. I wish you could say you could replicate it no matter how much of a badass you are, but I don't think I ever have.
No. And that's just the nature of being solo. And you can find yourself in that sometimes alone. But it just happens organically. You can't control it. I've talked about this before on here, but my PR around Lake Geneva's Lake Path came during the beginning of base building one year. I got to this at like mile 12, the path changes, and Lisa called me. And I started talking to her. I answered it. I didn't know what was wrong. Nothing was wrong. And I got in a rhythm while we were talking. It's a 2.5 hour run. It's long enough that you can talk. And like a mile and a half went by without me feeling it. And then I hung up the phone and got to work, and I cut down every mile I just got into it. And then suddenly when it's going well, you have momentum and you start getting into race mode. But she took away 1.5 miles of the run from me. And I can't replicate that again in the future. I have to be significantly more fit so that mile 12 to 13.5 doesn't hurt. How much more fit do I have to be to get into that zone? Like a lot. But one weird phone call, which I wouldn't recommend as a tactic, solved it that day. But as a result, later in the season, I was more fit and I ran like 6 minutes slower on this 21-mile loop. Maybe not 6, maybe 3, but it's just hard to get into that race mode without a race. So it's the downside of having local things that you're trying to do.
Yeah, and I know Shane isn't a spring chicken anymore. Shane, I think you're in your mid to late 40s. So also you're kind of fighting another thing there with just like, where does aging factor in for you, right? You could be fighting that a bit. But what I would say is, if it's been circling the same waters and now falling short slightly a number of times, you start to look at changing stimulus or changing just slightly your approach. Maybe, I don't know what you're doing for training. So it's like, can't access my 5K. Do I need to do 2 speed sessions a week and sharpen into something because I don't have that arrow in my quiver? Or am I avoiding all my threshold work and I find I'm petering out at the end? It's one of those things where then we might just have to start looking at maybe a slightly different stimulus or a change, just to see as an experiment if you just need to be shook up a little bit, if it's been a long while. But yeah, people man, to be, first of all, young and developing, a teenage boy, for example, or why is that funny?
It just sounded like you're giving the talk to your
Oh
son.
no, like it's just PRs come from everywhere because it's just you're getting older and developing like structurally and physically, or to be somebody who finds running in their 30s and they PR for their first 5 years based on being a beginner, and then you get down to it, like you
Yeah.
get into the grittiness of it where you're like, it's not just happening every time I go and run now, like shoot. Because there's like a honeymoon phase after that initial, I hate this hump of running once you start it up. And that happens to young kids too. You go through like a honeymoon phase of like years sometimes where it just seems to keep happening till it doesn't. And that's a harder position to be in. It's a tough one.
I have a question for you.
You thought I was going to give the people the talk right now?
Oh, just to be a young developing boy again. The world's your oyster. The athletes you work with that live in the mountains, do you have this happen semi-regularly where they work on something, they work on it, they stop PRing this climb, or it's hard, or they start getting worse at a climb and they go and do something else, and months later on like a easy to moderate run, they PR a climb?
Just had
Do you have
somebody
that?
do it. Just had somebody do it last week. Yes.
Yeah. The climb is just redundant after a while, even though it's good stimulus. It's just, you've run that climb so many times, you know every step of it and where it hurts and when it gets bad. And then you don't see that climb for a few months, and then you pop off the next time you do it without even really trying, because suddenly all the fitness you've gained comes out naturally and kind of, again, to use that word, organically. You're not trying to run it hard, and so you can just use all your fitness.
Yeah. So what's our advice to him then?
You find different pastures for a bit.
Okay, that would, I think we need to distill it down. Yeah, I think that's the case, and then maybe find some legit races instead of time trialing to do. Yeah. See, you'll find out then for sure, right? All right, next one, Cody from Canada. He was on our podcast as too. Cody Futen. Maybe sort of kind of a Q&A question. Sounds confident. I know you guys have done a ton of stuff on incline work, but what specific workouts above 15% do you and Brakken think are best for road running, high rocks, OCR, etc.? What specific workouts above 15%? So I don't know if he means like 30% or if he really means like a 15%.
Yeah. I guess I'll start with just general feelings, and that is that above probably 10% from the incline level itself is almost useless to a road runner for just like pure stimulus, because you're not going to use the stride you're working on. So I think any thresholdy or even intense interval session is fine as long as you're not trying to become a better runner, you're trying to become a better engine. Where its biggest usefulness to a non-mountain runner is that it allows you to get engine work without hitting the ground hard. That's its usefulness. It's not going to be more beneficial to a runner, but to an engine and a recovering body, any single workout you want to do at that is just like 70% of the cost or 60% of the recovery cost.
Yeah, engine and power, I would argue. You could argue, like, I just gave this advice to somebody on Thursday in a consult. Work either one end of the spectrum or the other at incline, meaning like get on there and spend some time in threshold and sit there, or let's do some power output like VO2 max type intervals where we're burning the legs up using a powerful stride, creating power and moving the needle that way. And then if you're a mountain runner or a trail runner, like, yeah, spend a lot of time in the middle too, because you'll be racing on those grades at that effort. But for a road runner, I think it's like engine work, keep it engine work, and just, maybe you get your heart rate up to sub threshold and sit there. Who cares how fast you're going or what incline? Or you're doing like a 60-60 where you're just ripping pretty hard. Maybe it's only 15 reps, but you're really blasting and working on like a powerful open stride just to generate that sort of end of your fitness. But for a road runner, not a ton of work in the middle, I would say.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
I like it because there's this weird concept that if you're good at the act of running, I think you can do your highest output work in a different modality and it improves your running. You can do row intervals or incline intervals at VO2 max or faster and get better at racing at that, as long as your running mechanics are good. So I agree, like work really hard on it if you're going to, because then it's just less costly. Or the long grindy stuff. That's which is what I've been doing. I've been doing 15 to 20 minute intervals at 10 to 20%. You know the pounding I would take doing 60 minutes of sub threshold work on the roads? I can't handle that right now.
Right. Yeah, and then you ask about Hyrox or OCR. I use Incline for Hyrox work, hybrid work. I implement it probably every other week, and honestly, it's mostly for perspective and engine. One of the hardest workouts I prescribe, and it really is. It's as competition gets closer, it's the back half uphill, and it's the last 4 stations of Hyrox with 4-minute runs after each at 15%. You run through it twice. I make you do 80 meters of burpee broad jumps twice, and you have to do the wall balls, 200 of them, right? And but it's really like talk about running uphill, lunging, and then having to go run up a hill again. Like talk about, it's just going to deduct you to your worst, and you're going to be ruined. And ideas when you get out on race course, holy smokes, that feels better than that workout I just did, because no stride was free.
Yep.
Right. But it's also a way to stay oddly available, because yes, that workout is a real B word, but at least we didn't take the pounding from the running. So it's just like engine. And the back half is where everybody suffers the most, obviously. So just like rubbing your nose in it. So that race day, you're just like, oh my God, I'm not running uphill. Thank you. Thank you. This is manageable. So you can look at it as a perspective thing. I do anyways.
I like that. Also, Hyrox is ugly running for everyone except for like Rich and Plyo. You know, like it reduces you down to your least pretty stride, and you want to get good at that stride, and that's incline running. There's this concept that I didn't invent, I'm sure, but I just call it the highest runnable incline. And I don't care what that number is. I'll just tell people your highest runnable incline is where we're doing that. And that's just, you just run a test during a warm up. You set it to, like, let's just say I'm going to set my heart rate to about 150 for me, just slightly above my aerobic threshold. And I'm just going to start running flat. And then I'm going to build up the incline percent by percent and adjusting the pace to keep my heart rate in there until I feel like my stride definitely changes to a different type of running. And then one notch below that is where my highest runnable incline is, where I feel like I'm using a running stride, and then I'm not. So that's where I sit at. And to me, that's your Hyrox mechanics. That's coming off a station. And now I'm not bouncing. I'm not prancing. I'm not long and glidey. I'm just grinding away. It's the same stride you use when you're running 3x5K at, half marathon pace, prepping for a long race. That third 5K is not your prettiest stride. It's your most mechanically sound stride. It's the same kind of concept, but I think you need to get really good at that version of running so that you have an all-day type of engine and stride you can use. And then over time, just like any other thing you work, you get higher up at your highest runnable stride. Might start at 6%, and a year later, it might be 16%.
Excuse me. I was going to add something to that. What was it? Oh, sometimes I just think adding, like, literally, it doesn't even matter what it is. It's like a perspective workout. Like, if you just feel like you're not gaining ground on flat workouts, or you're running a lot of the same paces and everything seems to be, your progress is halted, or you feel like you're just not getting very far as improvement. Great. Perfect time to take your mile repeats that take you 7 minutes and do 7-minute uphill repeats and just see if it's a different change up. Sometimes that can just be helpful plugged in there once in a while too.
I agree. This isn't what the question asked, but another really good candidate for uphill work are people with extraneous movement in their stride. People who are flailing, or they have way too much vertical oscillation, or whatever you want to call it, just inefficient movement in your stride. Run at 10% incline.
It'll tighten you right up.
Yeah, suddenly your arms are just like drumming right in front of you, like pat, 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 pat. Your feet are just lifting up and going down. They're not doing anything funky because there's no room for that. You got to get your body just back to the treadmill. Otherwise it's not working. So if you ever think you have bad form, I think running uphill is a good way to fix all that.
I never would have thought about that ever. That went across my mind, but you're absolutely right. It makes everything more compact. Although I will say, when I've reached at the last 15 seconds of a 30% interval, that gets pretty ugly.
Arms probably.
Yeah,
But
arms.
I think it's hard to flail a knee uphill.
It's probably true.
You know who you turn into Killian arms.
Oh yeah, the old killing
They
arms.
start cycling a little bit, but it's like in a generation way. Like it's a generating power rather than just flicking my arms around, because you don't really need your arms to run straight forward.
Well, I have good news. I think we're gonna do it because we have 3 questions left. So I think we're gonna do it.
Despite our 18-minute first check-in.
Question 1. Yeah, but this just, it's like I can breathe when this Q&A folder is empty. Like I'm gonna take my first deep breath in like 6 months when we finish.
And then I'm
this
going to send you
podcast.
my screenshots.
I know, and it's people. You frickin' people listening. We do a dumb Q&A episode, and then that reminds you that you have questions,
Creates
and
a
then
vacuum.
you send them in, and then I just can never take a breath. All right. Brett Milks Tyrannosaurus Rexes asks, quick question. I'm not sure if you guys talked about it. Brakken, I'm just going to give you the floor on this one. How important is plyometrics for runners?
I don't know. I don't really know. I think it's partially voodoo and partially like medical grade science. And it comes down to, who are you as an athlete? The older you get, the more important it is. The faster you need to be running, the more important it is. The worse you are at running, the more important it is. Plyo is one of those things that can help a lot of things. You can just put it on anything and it improves. You have slow ground contact, do some bounding. You need to get faster, do some bounding. Your calves are weak, do some bounding. You have trouble with rear chain injuries when you increase mileage, do some bounding. You can kind of apply it on anything, which makes it hard to really know what's good and what's not. But I would think that doing it is always better than not doing it, which means it should be considered important.
I'm going to hurt some feelings by saying this. I hope I do.
Okay.
All of you listening right now, as far as athletes go, by a whole, you are the least athletic group of people that would qualify themselves as athletes. The way some of us have been cornered into running because we suck at everything else, because it doesn't take good hand-eye coordination, because it doesn't take explosive athletic nature. You can be the most unathletic, fast person that's ever existed, but you don't move like an athlete. You're incapable of coordination. Thank God running doesn't take much. The trails are too complicated for you, so you stick to the roads. By large, as a group, Brakken is the exception, with an athletic background moving laterally through space. Most of you here listening are not athletic by whatever standard you want to use that definition. And because of that, I think it can only benefit as a blanket statement, those of you listening, to do some box jumps, to do some single-legged hops, to do some lateral skier squats, as I call them, to do some of the plyometric work. Most likely would help make you more athletic. The word proprioception, your body's awareness in space, and might translate somehow to a more efficient stride, or you better on your descents downhill, because you're not athletic. Probably. And I know that's harsh and I'm being a little dramatic, right? There's partial tongue-in-cheek here, but I'm not wrong. And so do runners need to do plyometrics? If you are a person who's like, if I'm not going in a straight line and I trip over my own shoes, and I'm like, yeah, I have a feeling that's going to make you a little bit better somehow. So I just wanted to get on a little bit of a rock there. Was that hurtful?
Yeah. Yeah, because it's like at our deepest, darkest childhood insecurities is that we're not athletic and as a result not popular, because we're on the cross country team.
I say this also lovingly, right?
Right. I mean, we are runners. Our life is running. Like
my God.
Only I can make fun of my brother.
Right. We had this freshman orientation for the incoming freshman recruits at Oshkosh, and we had a heck of a recruiting class my freshman year. We went on to be world national champs and many individual national champs. But anyways, we had this freshman orientation where basically we played baseball and screwed around and threw the Frisbee, and the upperclassmen like to put us on the spot. And some of these guys walking up to home plate to hit the ball and watching them swing the bat and make somebody pitch. It was the most embarrassing display of college athleticism I had ever seen. There's 2 or 3 of us that fit in, and the rest, it was if anybody saw this, it'd be that kid's coming here to be an athlete at this school? Like, and these are top end runners. It was so bad. It just reminds me of that day playing baseball at the freshman recruit. It was embarrassing. So so even the best, right? Even the best.
Kirk, when I was down at Campbell University as a freshman, I was down there to run. Like, it was a cross country team. There was a track program, but there wasn't even a middle distance coach. It was just your cross country coach brought you over to track. And so we were the stereotypical cross country runners. It was bad. And we shared residences with the wrestlers. So we were in the same block of dorms as the wrestlers.
So were we. And, and the basketball players at Oshkosh. Yeah.
Okay. Basketball players were balling. Like, they had big stipends. They had
not
nice
at Oshkosh.
But, and then, so as a result, we had shared meal times and all of that. And we also had a shared female interest. There was a girl that had hung out with a few of the runners and was also seeing one of the wrestlers. And it caused like this weird friction between the two groups.
Herself?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, great
girl.
Of
what variety? No, it's this
cross country runner.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she was awesome. But she had dated a wrestler and had kind of been seeing a runner, and there may have been some crossover in the time period. So
what a floozy.
These two, no, she's just like
I'm just
a normal college kid. and you had two really insecure groups of males, young males, who had a hard time with that. And so it was like this weird, like, it would be one of those I'm going to fight you kind of things, except the cross country team would never fight anyone. And the wrestling team, thank God, were too self-aware to ever fight the runners. And so there was like a little bit of talk and friction, but kind of wanted to be friends at the same time. Anyways, it was decided that we were going to play basketball against the wrestlers. And that was my softball Kirk moment, where there was a lot of talk back and forth about what was going to happen. And then 5 wrestlers and 5 cross country runners met on the basketball court to play. And it was spastic.
How did the wrestlers fare?
Horrible. If you've ever watched, wrestlers are not inherently athletic either. Incredibly tough, incredibly impressive, oftentimes horrible athletes. They're just bulked up runners. So, but in that moment, we were sitting here like, this is 2 of the programs at this university putting on this display of just, hey, shame.
Were you the original Kraker MVP of a basketball game?
I don't think anyone came out of that smelling good.
I'm pretty sure you shined, I would guess, in that situation.
Anyway, same kind of thing. 2 college sports programs playing a sport with not an athlete to be seen.
Listen, that same day, first day of practice, I've mentioned part of this story before. We all had to go do pull-ups on like a typical house ladder set across sideways over some beams, and 2 people just hung there. I mean, young men, 18 years old, they hung there. They couldn't do one pull-up. This is a collegiate athlete.
Yep.
All right.
Point is, we are a sport that doesn't need athleticism, but if you can cultivate a little bit of it, you're going to be better for it.
I agree. 2 left. Jan says, gosh, these shoe questions. Licking your chops. Question for the next Q&A. Is there any difference for the shoe when I change from road, gravel, forest to the treadmill? I run all of my easy mileage on the Clifton, but is this then also the right shoe for the treadmill? On the flats, we always change to a faster shoe for interval sessions. Should the same be done on the treadmill for, let's say, 4x8 minutes at 15%? Then he says, great podcast with a good balance of storytelling and wisdom. I'm a listener since the beginning from Germany and also took the advantage of Brakken's knowledge on training after a surgery with a consult call. Keep up the great work. So basically he says, do I need like quality day shoes for the treadmill and easy day shoes for the treadmill when I'm going uphill? Much like I have for outside. That's how I'm understanding it. Do I need a special fast shoe?
Good question. You do not, but it's a good chance to work on like every little tiny bit of your foot. I generally shoe down when I go uphill, meaning if I'm max height on the road, I am medium height at 10% incline. If I'm doing intervals, I'm now down to a minimal shoe. I just take it as an opportunity to strengthen my feet because I'm not hitting the ground. And what you do, I assume it's the same thing you do, Kirk, is you use your old shoes. My old racers are my treadmill workout shoes.
we're not getting a whole lot of return energy production from a treadmill belt at 15%. In fact, I would argue it's probably zero. I feel
Sapping
like
you.
it's, yeah, if anything. So like, yeah, I strip down, I go to a lighter shoe, if anything, just to carry my foot through a cycle better. And I just want to make sure whatever I use sticks to the treadmill, even when I cover it in sweat. It's all about the grip. And I think using an old pair of shoes that is lost its sexiness on the roads is a great shoe to bring to the treadmill and get some more life out of them. But no, I don't think any certain shoe is going to make an uphill treadmill session at 15% more productive at all.
I'm going to hold a shoe up, Kirk. I did my last high incline session. So above 20% is what I consider high for me right now in a shoe because I wanted to work on my feet and my calves. So by nature, that would be a lower stack shoe that's flexible.
Can I guess what you're going to pull up?
Yes, you may.
And is it a trail shoe or is it a road shoe?
It's a trail shoe.
It's a trail shoe, and you wanted to get on your forefoot, and there's not much to it. All right, I'm going to take a stab at this, and this would be a ridiculous choice for you, but screw it. Oh my God. I'm forgetting the model. The Evo Jaws, the Hoka Evo Jaws.
No, but that's a good question. Same color. It's too luggy.
Oh, the Reebok
All-Terrain Super. Look at this thing. that right
up.
there is a shoe.
Burrito.
I could not run on the road in. There is nothing to this shoe, but there's just a chance to work on my toes, my ankles, my feet, my Achilles, my calves in a really like inconsequential way.
The Hoka Evo Jaws feels like butter on the cement, by the way.
On the cement, I've never.
It's very knobby and luggy. Are you wearing them right now?
No, they're just, I have a pile of cast-offs down in front of me that aren't on the wall right now.
It's got some mud in between those lugs.
One
They're very
time
luggy,
it's been worn.
but they oddly feel good. There's sections of races. I raced in them in SoCal one year, and we had just cement, got to go across concrete parking lots. And I was like, this shoe's faring quite well on this concrete. So anyways, it could have been used on the treadmill.
That thing, though, is the only Evo Jaws I have. It's been used one time. And they're not known for being durable. That will be saved for the one shot out of the quiver kind of use.
I have one pair that I have just one or two runs in, and I've had this now for 2-3 years, brand new in the box, sitting there. I have like a whole corner of my shoe closet that is boxes of brand new shoes that are old that I just loved so much. I scooped them up when I could. And the Evo Jaws is one of them. Last question, or do you want to elaborate?
No, I don't think there's anything to elaborate unless you wanted to guess the one time I used that shoe. It was in training.
Okay.
Why would I wear that in training one time in a shoe that I value so much and is not durable?
You probably just wanted to feel it out in like an OCR 400s workout or something.
In preparation for what race?
Oh God, probably for what race did you do? The Cincinnati race or the Michigan race or Ohio race? What was it?
That's a good guess. It was actually one before that, the Pennsylvania short course.
That's what gosh, the 3K. Yikes! What a disaster, huh?
That was a disaster.
All right, last one. Big Freeze. What's up, Big Freeze? Hey boys, this probably isn't a common enough inquiry for a Q&A, but I thought it was. That's why I added it. But it's been on my mind for a bit. How should one go about becoming a running coach? Are there any required or recommended certifications, licenses, etc.? Or does a person just put out that they're taking on clients and just start? I'm signed up for a course with RRCA, but are there other avenues? Thanks for all you give us. I've been listening since day one and never miss an episode.
This is not a comfortable one to answer.
You don't like answering this one?
I don't.
Okay.
Because you either sound preachy or hypocritical.
You can be both.
I'm probably going to be. You don't need a single certification to be a fantastic running coach. And conversely, having every certification under the sun doesn't mean you know anything about being a running coach. Because we all know the people we grew up with in school who were book smart and couldn't apply it at all. And the people that didn't really study, but just understood the material. And it's the same way with coaching. Like you can learn how to coach out of a book and be great at it, or still not have a clue on how to implement it when the very first variable enters into the real world. So I would never stop anyone from getting a certification as long as it's from a place that will benefit you. I would never stop anyone from reading a single book ever. In fact, I'd say read every book, read every forum, listen to every speech every famous coach has ever given. But none of it is mandatory. The goal is understanding how to work with individuals. And that can't be guaranteed by a piece of paper, but you don't know which course or book is going to be the thing that fills in your knowledge and execution gaps.
So how does one become one then? How can you just slap it on your Instagram bio and let's roll, baby? Because the answer to that question is yes.
You can.
There are no governing bodies that says you can or cannot take money from people to give them advice. You're a consultant. There's no legality against you making exercise prescription as long as you aren't diagnosing in a medical sense, which doesn't happen in the running coach space generally. So as far as that goes, yeah, you could be a coach. You could call yourself whatever you want. Doesn't mean it's going to determine the value you bring to athletes, but there's no red tape to go through whatsoever as far as any of this goes.
I think the cleanest, most unimpeachable route is to get USATF level 1 certification. Start with getting their entry certification and become an understudy of someone. It can be as simple as booking consult calls with other coaches and going through the plans they write and why. Like at Kirk, I could just book you for an hour and say, show me 3 different training plans you've built this month and tell me why. Mm-hmm. And just keep doing things like that. Or get in someone's coaching tree, ask to work in it as an assistant for them. It could be at a middle school level, a high school level, a collegiate level. It could be an online coach and you just help handle their communication on social media. But getting to be an understudy of someone is how you get the first 5 years of your career and my career out of the way without negatively impacting the people you work with. We took our lumps by doing it ourselves for the most part. Like in the high school coaching world, we had people we worked with, but like online coaching, I just screwed up people's plans for 2 or 3 years and then figured out how to write plans. You can do that without screwing people up.
Or can you?
I mean, if you're an understudy.
I think this is how it starts. So if you have been brought up, here's the thing. First of all, I don't think you can be a running coach without having some form of running coach yourself at some point. I'm going to say it. First of all and foremost. What do I mean by that? Well, I was a high school cross-country runner and I had a coach. Great start. Then I went on and had a coach or was in part of a training group for this, and I got to understand the why or the what. What we do as first-time coaches is we regurgitate what has already been given to us. Mm-hmm. All we do is steal what our previous coach has done or our previous whoever helped us out showed us the way. We basically are just spewing out what we have been given already, right? Because it either worked for us or it's what we know. And what happens is you end up when you find a tenured coach is that only lasts for so long before we like to go to the lab, right? Mm-hmm. And we start experimenting on ourselves. And you get an athlete or two who seems like a unique case study to try this. And then you cycle through dozens, if not hundreds of people over years and years. And suddenly you finally land on something that is actually true to yourself and what you believe as a personal philosophy as a coach. But it always starts as regurgitation. It just does. And you need a starting point. So that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. I really do think it is. But if you're finding running in adult life and nobody's ever helped guide you, I just don't know how effective you're going to be out of the gates without at least starting with some sort of structure, even if it isn't your own brainchild, and then developing from there. If you find somebody first promoting themselves as a coach, hey, I'm just getting started up. I decided I'm going to start coaching. That's great. And maybe you can have a fantastic relationship. Brakken and I both started there. May I remind you? But most likely you're going to get probably a more customized, thought out, and thorough approach with somebody who is more tenured. But you do need to start somewhere. But I don't know where you hit it, Brakken. You hit it in OCR pretty hard. You started experimenting with what worked and what didn't. I just had a conversation with somebody this morning. I said, I'm my own guinea pig first. I do the workouts. I see how I feel during them, how I feel after them, what they do to my body. And then if I like it, I keep it and maybe put it in for you when it feels right. And maybe I ditch it. It's just a one-off and we move on with other programming. But the point I'm getting at is I don't think anybody, the first time they say, hey, I'm a coach, whether you're certified or not, you're not going to be very good. Not very good at all compared to what you're going to be after years and years of experience. So the point is you need to start, but what's the best point of entry? I don't know if I have an answer for that.
Yeah. I think the best point of entry, this isn't point of entry, the best place.
It's 2:00, Brakken.
Oh, it is?
Mm-hmm.
We got to go. You're not going to hear this piece then.
Give us 30 seconds and then we got to cut.
The most important thing you can do as a coach initially is understand the difference between programming and coaching. Programming is writing workouts or training plans. Coaching is everything else that happens outside of that. And you can learn both of those and they're independent of each other and then they become combined with experience. But you need to find sources that teach you how to do both. Simply programming is not coaching. And great coaches can be terrible programmers. And you need to know your strength, and that's where you start.
And I will say somebody who's hungry for knowledge, listening to a podcast like this, reading books like that, it's a great place to start. You're already more qualified than some people who label themselves as coaches because you're seeking knowledge. That's an important part of this. We have to go like right now, don't we?
We do.
This is a hard stop, huh?
Abrupt change. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We will see you next week for our 500th celebration episode.
Woo!